Thank you for tuning in to Transitions with Dr. Tam, where today we are talking about silver linings. I'm dedicating this entire month to really focusing on what's going well because we need to. Life can be a lot, and sometimes it's so easy to be overwhelmed and overconsumed with the negativity that surrounds us. So I really wanted to dedicate the month of September to really highlighting what's going well despite what's going wrong. So let's dig into it. I want to talk to you about one of my biggest regrets that actually turned into one of my biggest blessings. And I'm generally not one that subscribes to the word regret. I'm very aware that the things we go through make us better if we learn from them. So each mistake, each trial, each hurdle creates a better version of ourselves. They make us stronger. I get that. For all the things that I've gone through that I could say were major ordeals, my biggest regret actually involves spending money on a house I never really needed to buy. I'm not even kidding. So here's how it went down. The housing market just boomed. Like it became a seller's market for real, for real. And so I had a coworker and his philosophy was, we're going to sell our home, have a whole bunch of cash just sitting in the bank, let it grow, downsize tremendously, and then wait till the market crashes and be able to buy a home with a whole lot of equity because you have quite a bit of cash in reserve. And when he said that, I was like, that's a great idea. I've actually owned my home since 2011. I have a whole lot of equity in this house, and then I can sell it for way more than I purchased it for. And then I can sit on the cash and do all the things that he said do. So I did. My house sold in 3 days, guys. 3 days. 3 days. My house sold for about almost $100K more than what I paid for it. And then, of course, closing costs and all that stuff, I didn't exactly bank $100K. But I tell you what, if I didn't want to work for that whole year, I would have had more than my salary sitting in the bank. So I was fine. I was fine. And so what me and the kids did is we moved into an apartment that was closer to my job with the hopes of doing exactly what my coworker had suggested, sitting on this cash until the housing market crashes. And then you have several thousands, tens of thousands of dollars sitting in the bank to where you can almost just leverage yourself into any home you want to. Fast forward to 2023, the housing market still hasn't crashed. So I can't say that his advice was actually sound, but that's neither here nor there. But what I will say is that about 6 months into living in the apartment, I got the urge to want to be in a house again. My kids and I had been in a home again since 2011. I needed to expand so that way my growing kids have space. And then, of course, housing market wasn't too crazy, but I definitely didn't want interest rates to start soaring to where now I'm stuck in an apartment. So we were shopping around, and a coworker introduced me to this really, really amazing realtor who could get me out of my lease because I signed a year lease, but 6 months into it, I've got the homeowner's itch again. So we're back on the market, and we saw this beautiful house decorated for Christmas. Y'all, let me just tell you, don't go and buy houses that are just beautifully decorated for Christmas because the rest of the year still has to exist. So here we are shopping for homes. We walked into this house that had this really nice kind of rounded staircase. And at the base of the staircase was this giant nutcracker. Now, for all of you who don't know, let me tell you about me. I am a huge Christmas season person. So you can almost sell me anything around Christmas time just because I love the lights and the colors and the wreaths and all of that kind of stuff. Like I'm totally into the holiday spirit. So because this house was just so perfectly decorated, I was like, we're sold. I need it. I don't care what the asking price is. I've got enough cash to put in 20% for closing. That way I don't have to pay PMI. And let's go with it. So mistake number 1, do not go home shopping at night. We looked at this house at nighttime, which means I can't really see the neighborhood. What I'm looking at and impressed by is Christmas lights. But that's not true to what the neighborhood looks like in the daytime. The other thing is, don't make an emotional purchase during Christmas time. When I say I was enamored by how this home was decorated, and all I could think about was my tree and my decorations, and then just other things that I would do in the house. And let me tell you, the house in and of itself was beautiful. It had crown molding all over the place. And I mean like thick crown molding. It had the office that I wanted, separate from the formal living and the former dining. It was 2 stories, so that way my kids could be upstairs and I could be downstairs, all of the things. I wasn't paying attention though to the stuff that I probably should have been paying attention to, because I was just so in love with the Christmas decorations that were all over the place. So we put in an offer for the house and had to wait a couple of days to see if the owners would accept the offer. I tell you, I was like, Lord, please let us get this house, because I fell in love with it immediately. Guess what else I fell in love with about this house? It had 2 closets in the master bedroom. So now I've got a closet for all of my accessories, my coats and all that kind of stuff. And I have a closet for my actual clothes and shoes. I was so excited about that. Like, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't living the life. You know, I needed MTV Cribs to come over and interview me, because the house I was getting ready to buy. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. So I went to my coworker the next day and I said, girl, guess what I just did? She was like, what? I said, I just bought that house I was showing you on Zillow. She said, Tammy. Like, that was really fast. You know, I was like, no, for real. It's great. It's perfect. And the house came at such a great point. There was a great price point. So one of the things that was attractive to me about it is that I'm actually getting a house that is about the same price as the house that I just sold. And remember, the house that I sold for about $100,000 more than what I purchased it for. So I'm buying equal value, which means I've got money for this house. I can put down the down payment that would avoid me of paying PMI. And I was really excited about that, because that way I can really just pay the mortgage and not be paying that insurance piece. The other thing is, I was really excited about the commute. I had gotten up early one morning on a Saturday morning and drove from my apartment to the house, and it was about a 30-minute drive. So I was living in the Grand Prairie area, for anybody who's familiar with the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and the house that I just bought was in Burleson. So that is a little bit south of Fort Worth. And I love the Fort Worth area. So I was like, this is great. Like, I get to be in Tarrant County, and I was really enjoying just all of the things. So what I decided to do was just time that drive. It was about 34 minutes and I was just really excited about it. But I kind of felt away because the neighborhood didn't look the same in the daytime as it did at night. When I tell you I'm really big on aesthetics, I am not kidding. I am not kidding. So I'm looking for neighborhoods with sidewalks and with matching mailboxes. At the very least, what I'm looking for is some type of uniformity, something that makes the neighborhood look cohesive. And so I was like, well, they say neighborhood doesn't have an HOA, but that's neither here nor there. It's a beautiful home. I mean, the home itself is just gorgeous. But I wasn't too much in love with the neighborhood. And I was just thinking to myself, well, that will fade. I'll feel better. You guys, when it was time to actually move into the house, I was feeling away. While I was excited to sign and close on the house, I didn't feel as excited about moving. Now, granted, I was very excited about having more space, because being cramped with 3 children and a 3-bedroom apartment versus them having this huge backyard and their whole upstairs to themselves, you know, I was just thinking to myself, I'll get over it. We moved in a house with hardwood floors, high ceilings, and it was great. And my kids were sitting on the rounded staircase as I sat on the couch and asked them, are you guys sure you like it here? Mom, we love it here. But something in my spirit just wasn't settled, you know? And I just couldn't understand why. I just didn't feel like I was home. I felt like I'll get used to it. When I say I spent a lot of time living in that house, driving around the neighborhood, just trying to love it, just trying to get used to it. One of the things that was plaguing me was the neighbor's ugly truck sitting in my driveway. Like, that was really bothering me, that their really beat down truck was right in front of my mailbox. Like, again, aesthetics, move your car. And so I was like, okay, well, Tamika, you don't own the street, so you can't really possess this part. Like, they have a billion kids and a billion cars because they've got some children who drive. So naturally, they're going to run out of space in their driveway for all of their cars. And also, they don't have any room in their garage because their garage is packed. And I was like, oh my God, I'm living next door to an episode of Hoarders. So that was one thing. Another thing that was plaguing me was the fact that it didn't really come off as a community to me. Like, for the entire time that I lived on that street, I didn't interact with my neighbors, but they didn't interact with me. There was a vibe that was off, if you sense what I'm saying. I didn't really feel wanted or welcome there. And even when I had friends come by, they would notice the same thing. Like, Tam, you okay over here? And I was like, yeah, everything is fine. Everything is fine. Nothing was fine. I just felt in the air that it was a different, it just wasn't good. And so I just wasn't in love with it. I wasn't in love with it at all. Another thing that I used to do in my old neighborhood was run these 5Ks in the neighborhood. I had a route mapped out. That entire time that I lived in that house, I did not run once. I didn't feel comfortable in that neighborhood. I never felt the motivation to find a route. I just did not. I lost all of the motivation. I didn't necessarily feel very safe, And so I just didn't love it. And so I kept going to other neighborhoods nearby, just wondering, well, maybe I can buy a home out here, just a couple of streets away. And I'm not even kidding. Just a few streets away from the street that I was living in felt different. It felt like that's a community. Those people are inviting. And I just felt like I made this huge mistake. So I ended up getting a text one day from my loan officer, the person who had done all of the things for this house that I just purchased. And he was asking me about refinancing. Now, of course, I didn't pay attention to that, but interest rates were dropping. And so a couple of texts later, I just decided to give him a call. I said, hey, talk to me about this interest rate dropping and the potential of refinancing the house. Is that even possible I just bought it? Like, I literally just bought this house a couple of months ago. And he said, well, yeah, it's a really good time to do it now because you don't have a whole lot of time in the house. So renewing it for a new 30-year mortgage is not going to really take away anything from you because you owe 30 years right now. And I was like, really? He said, yeah. So we would just tack on a couple of extra months because you've only been in the house you've been here less than a year. And I said, so how does that work? He walked me through how all of that worked. And so I ended up finding out that to refinance the house would actually be a new loan. And so here's the question I asked him. So if it's a new loan, could it also be a new house? And he said, yeah, are you wanting to sell the house? I said, can I? And he said, sure. I said, to get a new interest rate? He said, yeah, you would lock in for whatever the interest rates are now. And I said, let's go find me another house. And so we went on the digging spree to find another house. Of course, some people thought I was crazy because literally at this point, I have been living in this house for 10 months. For 10 months and was miserable every day for 10 months. Here's a couple of reasons why. In addition to the ugly white truck that was parked in front of my mailbox, you can tell that some people take better care of their yards than others because there's no HOA. So nobody's governing what the neighborhood looks like. That was an issue. So on one end, you've got some really tall grass that looks like we are living in the fields. And then on another end, we look like we're living in, Stepford Wives. I just couldn't do with the inconsistency. The other thing about it is that 34-minute drive that I went from my apartment to the house to kind of time how my commute to work would look was a lie. Because I made that drive early on a Saturday morning when there's virtually no traffic. I failed to make that commute happen when I was going back and forth from work. Here's what I found out. The drive from Burleson to Grand Prairie is actually about an 8-year drive. I'm exaggerating, but not by much in my spirit because traffic Morning traffic, everybody is driving east. And then on my way home, everybody is driving west. So I am stuck on the highway for an hour minimum. And remember, when I got there, everybody was in middle school. So at the school district where my children attend, middle school starts at 8:50, so 9 o'clock. I could leave a little bit later and feel fine. But the next year, when my son, my oldest, started high school starts at 7:30. So now I've got to get him to school at 7:30, which is dead in the middle of traffic. But I can't leave until after 4 o'clock when the middle school kids get out, which means I'm in that 5 o'clock rush hour traffic. So it took 2 hours. There was not one day when we got home before 7 p.m. And it's not because we left school late. It's because that's how long it took to get home. There was always an accident on the freeway. Even if we took the back way may have had less traffic, but it was just a longer way. It's like sit here on the freeway and be in gridlock or drive an hour out of the way just to avoid other cars on the road. Well, either way, you're driving a long time. So again, there was not a day that we got home before 7. And there was not, if we left after 5 a.m., we were going to be late. And again, I didn't have to get my son there until 7:30. So I was putting in easy 12-hour days. 4 of those hours was in the car. It was terrible. I was crying on a daily basis, just living that far out. And so when Alex told us that we could look for a new home and have a new loan with a lower interest rate, I was like, let's go. So I actually ended up selling the home November 27th. My birthday is November 28th. I considered selling that house my gift to myself. And I did not care about going to work and telling my coworker, hey girl, guess what? I bought another house. I'm moving again. Because when you hate something that bad, you are ready to get out of it. I was also mad that I had spent cash putting down a down payment so that way I could buy this home without the PMI. I still have some cash in reserve, but I didn't want to spend all of my money just on buying this house and selling this house. Luckily, I was able to come out even, so I still ended up in a really good financial situation with the house that I'm currently living in. I was able to make it out all right and sell the house that I had in Burleson for slightly more than what I paid for it. So it worked out. It worked out. So in light of talking about silver linings, here's the silver lining. Silver lining number 1, even if I had waited for the time when said housing market would crash, I would have been living in that apartment still. It would have been like 5 years because the economy, we're inflated. So I really didn't miss out on moving fast. I didn't miss out on wanting to get out of the apartment in order to live in a bigger space, more comfortable for me and my children, because the housing market is still trash. In fact, it's worse now than it was when I purchased this home. So yeah, so much for that wait and that whole theory of selling your home so you can pocket the money and let it grow until the housing market crashes. It hasn't happened. Silver lining number 2 is the house that I'm living in right now, which I love, I absolutely love it, was not available at the time that I was living in the apartment. It became available at the time when I was tired of my house in Burleson. So living there and being annoyed with living there is what even motivated me to move again. And that text and conversation with my loan officer opened the door of possibilities that I did not think was possible. I really thought that I was going to have to live in that house for a minimum of 3 years, or else there would be some penalty attached to the loan or whatever. But when I found out that that was not true, we proceeded in selling the house and I'm back on the market. But going back on the market is what exposed me to this house. It was not available back in May when I was leaving my apartment. It became available in October when I was selling my house. So I end up back in the housing market. I am touring homes. We stumble upon this. My daughter and I were looking at homes after church on a Sunday. And when I say we walked into this house and felt at peace, I was like, I don't know what it's going to take besides prayer and a miracle and some really, really amazing sellers. But this is the house that I want. Aesthetically, it had everything that I wanted. I was happy because it's 2 stories again, and each story has its own AC unit. So I'm not burning my kids up because I'm cold, but heat rises to the top. So they're living in a furnace. Those are things I did not think about at the other house. The kitchen has adequate storage space. When I was looking at the other house, I was just looking at the black countertops and I thought that was cool. But once we moved in, I realized there's not enough space for my appliances. There's not enough space for my pots and pans. Whereas this house, there's plenty of space. I don't even need it because I don't cook like that. But I love the idea that the things that I didn't even look for there, because of that experience, I looked for it. Like, these are things that I looked for when I got to this house. Like, as soon as we walked in, I wanted to see if there were 2 different heating and cooling units on the different levels of the house. I wanted to see if the laundry room was close to the master bedroom, because at the other house, every time somebody was washing their clothes, I could not hear my own TV. I could not hear myself think because the laundry room was attached to the garage, which was right by my bedroom door. So I also paid more attention to the layout of the house. I love the layout of this house. I seriously do. Another thing that I really paid attention to was, where am I going to put my Christmas tree? Of course, I'm still thinking about the decorations. And we were able to actually move in right before Christmas of that same year. So we sold the house right before my birthday. We were able to move in right before Christmas, and I decorated it beautifully. And so did the neighbors. They decorated their houses, and I loved it. So I was able to fulfill my dreams of having a really nice tree by a beautiful staircase. Another silver lining, like, these are just coming up. These are amazing. I love this. I love the fact that at any given moment, my daughter wants to go to a sleepover or Six Flags or hang out with her friends. It's not taking her a long time to get to them, and they can come over here. We can go over there. No big deal. And it's not like, oh, I have to see you next year because I live too far away. My boys ended up running track. They can easily get back and forth to meets and to practices without having to worry about traveling over an hour to get back and forth. So it's cheaper on gas that I'm paying for. It's less wear and tear on the car. And again, I feel a lot more comfortable with them being able to travel shorter distances and get to the places that they need to get to. That was the case when we lived in Burleson. It was just too far from everyone. It was an hour drive to church. It was forever away from the airport. I didn't even enjoy going to the stores there because I'd already built a life in this area where I'm living because I'm used to this area and it's built up really nicely. So I really felt alone there. It was very lonely. And let me tell you, I had some friends that never actually visited me because they feel like Fort Worth is just too far away. And now it's not an issue. That's not an issue at all. And the best part about it, guys, I love the community. Like, I'm in an area where my neighbors are friendly. We actually talk to each other. I feel wanted and welcome. And I feel at home. And my neighbors right across the street from me know some really good friends of mine. So there's also like a built-in fellowship there. It's like, oh, we have friends in common. And this time, it is an 18-minute drive from work. I don't have to take any freeways if I don't want to. I'm never sitting in gridlock traffic because there are so many different routes to get to work. Even if there's an accident or some type of thing that's blocking the roads, I can just take another road that leads to another road that still gets me to work. As we were talking, me and the kids, they were seeing the delight on my face and watching their mom just walk around the neighborhood with this huge smile because I feel at peace. They shared with me something very interesting. They told me that in the backyard of our other house, there was like this fire pit that had bricks and logs on top of it. So I never really did mess with the fire pit because I'm not trying to burn my house down. I'm not that girl. I'm not doing anything with a fireplace. I'm not doing anything with a fire pit. No, I'm good on that. But my kids went in the backyard and played a couple of times back there. And they told me that they had lifted the logs and the bricks off of that fire pit and saw a bunch of snakes. Let me tell you something. If I had been aware that there were snakes in the backyard that my kids were hanging out with, we would have moved that day. How dare you be in the backyard playing with snakes like it's no big deal? Like, I didn't raise these country kids. I am a city girl. What are you talking about? I don't play with snakes. But this whole time, while I'm living there, dealing with the aesthetics and the things that I do not like, recognizing and seeing things that I did not notice when we were in the buying process, and just really hating where I live, the situation was actually way worse than I even thought it was. There were snakes on the property. There were alive snakes on the property. And I was clueless to that. So the silver lining is also, check this out, sometimes the things that we are focused on and we've honed in on that are an inconvenience and very uncomfortable for us is not even the biggest issue that's going on in our life. But God has a way of covering the real tragedy. He has a way of protecting us from the real hurt, from the real danger. Sometimes things are way worse than we know, but God knows we can't handle the truth of how bad it really is. So he covers us. And I was seriously covered, unaware of the snakes on the property. And my kids were aware. Check this out. My parents were aware. Apparently, there was a day when we were at the other house and there was like some snake just crawling up the driveway. I was not outside at the time. It was just my parents and the kids. So they were aware. Sometimes everybody can see how crazy your life is, or how weird things are, or how chaotic things are. And you are just sitting at a place where, hey, this doesn't feel good and this isn't great. But people who are on the outside looking in are wondering how you're surviving, because they can see it way worse from a different angle, from a different perspective than you can. And because you're in it, focused on something else that's uncomfortable, you're not even aware of how masterfully you're moving through life, because other people can see other things and other parts and other aspects of what you are enduring, the storm that you're actually enduring, and how you are gracefully just getting through it. I'm telling you, that was my big takeaway. Lord, thank you for how you have covered me from things that are way worse than what I thought, in a way to where my focus was on the thing that bothered me, but it wasn't on the thing that could actually bite me. Like, that's a whole word by itself. But I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful to be where I am. So as far as this whole topic of silver linings is concerned, just understand that there's a little bit of good in the bad. And it's important that we're able to acknowledge that. It's important that we do recognize the mistake that we made that may have gotten us in this situation. It is okay to understand that you do have to deal with some of the consequences of your own decisions, and hasty decisions at that. But when an opportunity arises for you to make a different decision, to do better and to be better, that in and of itself is a silver lining. Not everybody gets another chance. So for the fact that I was afforded another chance by happening upon a text message from a loan officer, I see that as the silver lining. The silver lining that I capitalized on an opportunity that I didn't even know could happen. I ended up stumbling into a home that I actually do love, a neighborhood that I actually do love, that has no snakes in the backyard. So whatever your silver lining is, just take it as that. Just understand that, hey, dark clouds exist, but that silver lining exists because the sun is right behind you, ready to shine and ready to make your day bright again. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Transitions with Dr. Tam. I'll see you next time.